The eyes of the world will be focused on the Daytona International Speedway in just a couple of days' time, but today we make our way to upstate New York where the IMSA iRacing Online Sports Car Championship lands up before its trip to the World Center of Racing. Hello folks, welcome along to Friday Night Primetime, our Junior Kanky party on hand, alongside with Peter Mackay as we get set to go racing at one of America's classic racing venues. Peter, this is one of my favorite tracks in all of North America.
Yeah, Watkins Glen is just one of these tracks that's got a beautiful flow to it. It follows the natural curvature of the land and it's got great heritage behind it, especially in endurance racing. The Watkins 6 Hours of the Glen is one of those classics that drivers always want to win.
And our own iRacing edition of that is one that I have won, but only because I've stayed out of trouble. That's a deal that we'll be talking about a lot over the course of 45 minutes of racing. Here's a look at the schedule though for 2024 Season 1. 12 weeks of competition, and what a first half of the season it's been. We went from the Circuit de la Sarthe to close out 2023, over to Long Beach to open up the new year, and of course rumbling over to Daytona to build up to the iRacing Daytona 24 next week. And then the second half of the season, Peter, it starts with a trip to the Nordschleife.
Oh, well, you can't really kick it off much better than that, can you? I'm a big fan of the Nordschleife, and to see multi-class racing with prototypes out there. We haven't seen prototypes race at the Nürburgring since 1983 in the real world, but here in the sim, we can do what we please.
I can't wait for that because you mentioned multi-class racing. We have 3 classes, of course, in this IMSA iRacing series. All 4 of the GTPs that competed in the 2023 IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship. They're, of course, going to be joined by a handful more entries in 2024's real world competition. The Spec Dallara P217 in the LMP2 class, and then the GTDs joined by the Audi R8 LMS Evo, as well as some of the other newer cars in 2023. What fun we can have, Peter, no matter which class you're in.
Yeah, and whatever brand you're a fan of, there's plenty to choose from there, whatever your flavour is. But great to see iRacing taking the lead with having all 4 of the current GTP cars. Of course, in the real world, we've got the Lamborghini coming out very, very soon, and I'm sure iRacing are working away in the background on it. You
certainly hope so, because there's been so much momentum with this GTP class, both in that real world, but in this virtual world as well. We're coming off, of course, the IMSA Esports Global Championship, where we saw the GTP and the GTD cars go racing. They went racing at this track in particular as well. Let's talk to the viewers about the track though, Peter, because as we look from up above, it looks simple, but it's, if anything, but simple.
Oh, it's just a wonderful place. It's big risk actually at Watkins Glen. If you get it wrong, the walls are so close. It's very old school in that sense. Of course, the extra part through the inner loop toe and the heel of the boot was added on a little bit later on in the life of the track, but it's a really special place to go racing here. Can-Am went here, used to host the United States Formula 1 Grand Prix as well.
And usually we are used to seeing relatively warm temperatures in upstate New York. We come here traditionally to race in summer conditions. However, today with qualifying getting ready to come to a close, you can see from the relatively grey skies, is not that balmy in terms of track conditions. We're into the final 60 seconds of qualifying as it runs right now. GTP's setting the benchmarks at around 126s, these Dallara P217s at around the 130s, and the GTDs 143. So some delta between all 3 of those classes as we see Michael Capisi not improve on what will be his final attempt in qualifying. Most of the drivers mostly set through the field though. And with 3 classes all starting at the same time, Peter, it means P2s, GTDs going to be starting well in intriguing places in the final sector.
Yes, they will. Yeah, where they make their lap time up is slightly different. There isn't all that much different between the LMP2 and the GTP in terms of the chassis. The GTP chassis very much is derived from the LMP2 regulations. The only difference really is you have an open book on the powertrain, open book on the aerodynamics within certain parameters, but most critically the difference is the hybrid system. The way that the GTPs get out the corners, that's the way they really make their lap time up. They've got such big punch in power as they come out the slow corners.
It's 50 additional horsepower that's spooled up from the hybrids here on iRacing, so like Peter mentions, significant grunt for them to go. We get a full formation lap to run you down through the starting grid for 45 minutes of racing, so we don't need to scramble through what is going to be 40 contenders. Let's jump down the trackside to today's starting grid. We'll start off, of course, with the GTPs, where it is going to be a bit of an Acura fest, where Simon Callarts in the Movano sim racing car will be alongside Alexander Kessler with Dominic Gupflyer, and then Jan Volmers on the second row of the starting formation. Philip Bohm and then Dominic Englander on the 5th and 6th positions respectively. 7th going the way of Giuseppe Ruggiero, and then Jacob Cohn rolls alongside him in 8th position. Ryan O'Connor, Thiago Rodriguez 9th and 10th positions, with Rodriguez hoping to pick up the pace. Christoph Harge and then Noah Rail 11th and 12th, with the first of the Porsches finding their way into the mix, and then Jan Lichowski, Manuel Lange, and then Martin Brandberg and Dominic Nokel, the final contenders in that GTP class. In the LMP2s, it's going to be a pair of teammates on the inside, Leo Russell alongside Marco Capisi, but with Axel Pinet behind his counterpart. What can they do to coordinate on the race start? Gerland Massing will be alongside on that second row with Emmanuel Olivier and Nikolai Loft, 5th and 6th positions. Go back to row number 4, you find Marcus Nielsen and Brian Molitor, Andres Lind, and then Morten Agerson at the very back of the LMP2 class. Let's not forget, strategy has been important in that class over the course of the season so far. Audi and Porsche on the front row, Rodrigo Sauki and Timo Schmidt separated by just over a tenth of a second, with the best livery in maybe all of motorsports, those Spider-Man colors, the Matthias Perrin and the number 6 machine alongside Philip Bereswell. Robert Wajuras and Stefano Narsichi on the edge of the top 6. You go back to 7th to find Daniel Morpi, Antonio Tabarelli, Matt Loveridge in those Olympus Racing colors, Corey Turner, and then Stephen Jokazimic and Stefan Hills from 11th and 12th positions. It's a big GTD class. Thomas Fogas, Kiel Spalding, and then Kofi Hyman and Luis Marino make up the rest of the GTD class. That's your weekly butchering of names on RaceSpotTV. And now we still get the full formation lap, Peter, to laugh at some of those names.
You're being too hard on yourself, Arjuna. Of course, the great thing about this particular series is it's that whoever turns up on the night and the top split, the top ranked drivers get to join us here on RaceSpot Friday night prime time. And yes, so the names are thrown at us quite quickly. So I'll come to your defence here, Arjuna.
We want best effort, but yeah, I'm sure that some people are in the chat going, that's not how you say it, and I agree, that's probably not how you're meant to say it. 45 minutes of racing, we expect a pit stop at some point in all 3 of the classes. There's going to come that crucial time of the race, though, where, Peter, we start to deal with traffic, and it's always the most scary time for me.
It is, yeah. These GTP cars, they carry huge amounts of speed. They don't necessarily cover the same absolute maximum minimum corner speed that the LMP2s can, but they just really boogie down the straights, and that can be a help and a hindrance sometimes when coming through traffic, and it does get narrow in places here at Watkins Glen. It's going to be fun seeing these prototypes try and cut their way through. As you mentioned, Arjuna, a lot of drivers going for the Acura AR06 GTP car, which runs one of my favourite GTP cars because it runs that car that originally set out to be an IndyCar engine, and when you listen to it you can see why.
It is one of the best sounding engines in that GTP. They all have their own unique way of sounding great, though, to be fair.
They do.
None of them sound bad. What's your favourite, though? Is it the Acura?
I think on balance it's got to be the Cadillac. I mean, you can't say no to just a filthy 5.5 litre V8 just rumble. I don't think we have any Cadillacs in the field tonight, though, sadly. But loads of Acuras, a Porsche in there. And actually, the Porsche's engine's an interesting one. It's had a few uses in its life. In its smallest capacity, in its original capacity, it was the engine that went in the RS Spider LMP2 car 15 years ago. Then it was in the 918 street car, and now it's found its way back into a race car, albeit moved up to 4.6 litres.
I'm just saying, the RS Spider is one of the best sounding cars of all time. I don't think the 963 necessarily sounds as good.
No, it's a great car. It's just orally, it's not up there with the RS Spider for certain.
Are we in alignment that the RS Spider is maybe the best sounding car of all time?
It's in the top 3 anyway, I think so. Certainly on Porsches anyway.
The problem is the RSR also exists and has a claim to stand there as well, doesn't it?
And isn't that the wonderful thing about iRacing as well, how good the sound engineers just nail those sounds. When you've heard one in real life and you hear it in the sim, you're like, yep, they're one and the same.
And sometimes some of the onboards that we get, it's uncanny how close we can get. 45 minutes on the clock, the sun rising in the background, and we're ready to go here in upstate New York. Watkins Glen always throws plenty of surprises at drivers, and here in the IMSA iRacing Online Sports Car Championship, it will be no different. All three classes see the green flag drop at the same time, so as the GTP storm in towards turn number 1, LMP2 is heading off into the penultimate and final corners. GTD machine still coming up in towards that final sector. They're 3 wide for the GTP, those, as the hybrids spool up, finally single file, as 100 feet of elevation gained through the run, up through the S's. Single file for the entirety of the LMP2 class. Great to see them start tidily as well. GTD's coming towards Barney the Flagman, Peter.
Yeah, and it's the Audi of Rodrigo Lezoski who lead those GTDs over the start-finish line for the first time, chased by a plethora of Porsches, a couple of AMGs in there as well, so good mix amongst the GTD cars. And as you mentioned before the show, first GTP crash, number 30, Acura off in a big way, and so Jacob Cohen
straight back to pit lane as well. The bus stop's already claimed its first victim, and surely it will claim plenty more in terms of how violent those curbs can be. The GTPs are going to come to the end of this lap as the GTDs are only about halfway through, heading into the inner loop now. Look how close to the wall they run as they just maximize their run through the curbs. That's where the GTPs get unsettled, Peter, because they need aerodynamic performance, which means stiff suspension platform. That's not necessarily something you want over curbs.
No, it could get very busy there through that bus stop chicane at the top of the back straight. The thing is, as well, is when you run the Watkins Glen layout without that chicane, you get a really good overtaking opportunity up there. But of course, with the chicane, that sort of takes it away. And watch out for that being a hot spot when we get into the mix-up of traffic with the prototypes and GTs together.
I can't quite believe I'm saying this, but 42 drivers got underway and only one driver back on pit lane at the end of the opening lap as GTPs back up towards the top of the track as LMP2's just coming across the line. We are going to see traffic in maybe only 2 or 3 laps time. The question really is how aggressive are the drivers going to be in the first sequence. I mentioned when reading the grid that teammates may try and work together in the LMP2 class to try and get 1 and 2. Well, Michael Capisi has been able to hold that second spot as they rise to the top of the S's.
Yeah, those LMP2 cars, they really do draft well. You get a strong slipstream effect from the car in front. So if you've got a teammate out there in that leading group, that can be hugely helpful. But it's just a wonderful machine, that Dallara P217. It wasn't necessarily as competitive as Dallara would have liked it to be in its real world life, but it's had such a thrilling life here on iRacing. And yeah, wonderful machine to drive. If you've not tried it on the iRacing platform, go and give it a go.
It helps when there's only one LMP2 car, doesn't it, in some ways? But as these machines put on some fun fighting at the end of what will be their second lap, let's go back to the first lap and figure out what happened indeed over the curbs.
That went sharply as well. It just seemed to catch completely the wrong part of the curb, and the car just swapped around really quickly. Let's get an onboard look then up into top gear. 7-speed X-Track gearbox in these cars. And
that doesn't look pleasant, does it?
No, it didn't look like it gone that far offline either.
Was that? We'll take another look at it. Was there a lunge up the inside at the lot? Oh, the trees are going to block that shot, aren't they? No, that indeed was all by himself.
Very strange, unless he's maybe got the car really trimmed out. Because there's 2 really different ways to set the car up here at Watkins Glen. You've got a lot of very fast corners where you want big high downforce. Same mistake there. Oh dear. So in some ways you want big high downforce for the big wide sweeping corners. However, you want a car with less downforce and lower drag for the long drag straight. So maybe just running a little bit less downforce got caught out a little bit, and
and that's Petit from 3rd position, who found out just how dangerous those curbs can be. And surprisingly, in the LMP2 machine, which is, I'm not saying it's better over the curbs than a GTP, but it's not necessarily known for having the same level of issues.
Yeah, interesting one there. It just seemed to pogo out of control entirely. Well, no such problem for Simon Curlarts in the #1 Acura. Of course, the numbers here are all done on the driver's iRating, so the #1 car is the highest rated driver in the field and works all its way down. Oh, problem for our pole sitter. The 25 Audi's got damage.
That left rear's looking worse for wear, and it's just as we were about to see traffic, but traffic hadn't yet closed. He's pulled to the side, he's bringing it back down to pit lane. Timo Schmidt takes advantage, and now it's Porsche, Mercedes at the front after what had been a great job in qualifying and then a great job on the start to lead. It's all gone wrong for Rodrigo Lazowski.
Yeah, it has. That's a shame, because the new Evo 2 Audi, which came out a few weeks ago here on the iRacing platform, a big improvement over the old car, a little bit more stable, but are we going to be just got away from him? I think there's a few drivers that are trying to go a little bit lower downforce trim, try to really trim the car out and take the risk in the corners, and it's catching them out there in that change of direction at the bus stop.
And maybe there's as well just a bit too much aggression sometimes with that curve. It is an esports line, a sim racing line that I feel like sometimes we take through there. In the real world, the line that we take would probably break the car if you tried to do that for 6 hours straight. And that's one of those realities of when you go to a track like this. When you go to Sebring, it being so bumpy that, you know, you are going to just have to deal with wear and tear on various little bits of the machine. GTPs into the traffic, and for the first time already the gap up to 2 seconds. This is where, if you're the leader, you can afford to maybe not take as many risks, but it's GTPs through traffic. They're going to find their way past.
And going through the S's, it's oh, yep, there you go. Massive.
But I think that was GTD on GTD murder.
No way. Wow. And all the GTPs seem to get through cleanly. Well, it's the Volt Motorsport. Oh! Another big one for the GTPs. The whole front end gone there.
What? There's another one off, by the way, as
Carnage.
well. Carnage is the best way to describe it, and it's left now 4 cars fighting for what is the final spot on the podium in this GTP class.
And Philip Bohm, car #7, he was one of the front runners, and he's lost it. That chicane is proving, it's wreaking havoc on the field. Here we go, riding with the Acura right in the heat of the fight, and you see you have to go offline round the GTD cars, and then back on the power again, letting that hybrid system spool up and fill the gaps in between the turbo lag. And what a car, what a powertrain here in this Acura. And look, so smooth from the GTPs, just shifting their way through the traffic with ease.
Well, now as these drivers hopefully settle into the rhythm, that's a dive up the inside of a BMW through the penultimate corner. I was saying settle into the rhythm of passing safely. Long way around for a handful's going to see them squeezed out. Another one jumps up the inside as they fan out either side of the GTD contenders. It's what you expect the first time through traffic. Most of the drivers through safely. 2 seconds for Karloff to Kessel for first and second, and then a further 6 to those behind, as it's going to be a rumble up through the top of the S's once again. But for 4th position, Rogero's closing on the back of the 35.
Wow, going through those S's, it's so perilous for multi-class traffic. We see incidents there in the real life. Watkins, Glen, 6 hours, and you know it can happen a lot here in the simulator too. But it really another one at the S's.
Now okay, we have to go back and try and figure out what's been going on. Let's start with the first thing that happened up through the S's, so we ride on board, and you can't bump draft your way up through an S. I mean, what is going on?
Stupid. That is just stupid.
I'm stunned. I don't even know what to say. So Tamas Foges is the one that gets run over by Kofi Hyman, just to clarify.
Yeah, that's really not on. I mean, you could even, of course, in iRacing there is an incident reporting system where you can, send in footage, and oh dear. So it was basically 2 cars into one there from the GTPs going into the chicane. But yeah, I do wonder if the driver of the Volt car will be putting a protest in for that one, because that was just a straight dump into the wall.
Yeah, so that's the chaos that we saw after. I'm surprised that a GTD didn't get mixed up in that one as well. That was about as close as you could get to disaster without actually having disaster. And then another one of the GTDs did have contact with the GTP this time.
Dear me, there's certainly not much patience being exercised here. You get another look at it. It's very, very late.
Ooh, well.
That gap was always going to close.
That is one of those interesting ones where if you're the GTP, you're trying to decide which side to commit to, and a GTD does have an element of understeer to it, at least in relation to a GTP, right, Peter? Not saying a GTD is lethargic by any means, it's just not a prototype.
No, completely different way. Oh dear, more smoke, more problems at the bus stop chicane. I don't think we've had a clean lap past that chicane yet. Goodness me. But yes, you're right. I mean, I think for the prototype there, they're the one with a huge amount of closing speed. They've got to make sure they get past safely. All the GT car can do is just hold their line, which is exactly what that particular GT car did. And yet it gets turfed into the wall. And as we mentioned at the top of the show, the walls are close at Watkins Glen. There is no runoff here, and it's almost like a street circuit in places. It's almost got almost Macau vibe to it in certain places, and yeah, if you get it wrong, you're going to find the wall hard.
Right on board over the shoulder, and this is 4th position, as hasn't really been a breakaway by any means, as the GTDs have made their way on, being passed on through by the GTPs. The question will now come for the LMP2 cars, which are starting to dissect their way past, how they're going to break up the gaps up towards the front. The gaps between the P2s, well, it's almost 2 seconds between every single one of the top 4 right now.
So in LMP2, Leo Russell leading by 1.2 seconds from Michael Capizzi, and Emanuele Oliveri in 3rd, but that can shake back and forth all the time in traffic as the LMP2s make their way through, and it's a relatively short lap here at Watkins Glen, just under a minute and a half for the GTP car, so we will come across traffic quite a lot through this race. Of course, 12 minutes in, and already the LMP2s making their way through the GTD traffic. And
that, I think, partially, of course, because we all started at the same time. We would have maybe seen the LMP2s a bit earlier if the GTDs had to wait even longer. Marcus Nielsen behind Glen Massing is going to have a look to the inside, and number 10 lets him on through for 4th position. Just look at them bouncing over the curbs. We mentioned aerodynamic platforms from prototypes. Nice tidy battle between them as they filter up towards the very front of the GTDs. This is where, as well, I always talk about, Peter, experience is where you make your time in these traffic situations, because it's been so crazy. I mean, we don't even know everything that's happened, I'm sure, in terms of incidents through this race. And so the drivers that have been through the most situations can quickly respond to what they're seeing around them and make the right decision at the right time. Well, they're the ones that can come out of things on top.
Yeah, I think knowing what your car is capable of and not, and what its characteristics are, and playing to that in traffic is the Olympus Esports Porsche off the road, and it looks like might have a bit of suspension damage there. Possibly might have to come in and take a pit stop and get some repair work done. But yeah, you have to really work to the car's attributes as well. So if it's an just a light spin there, if it's say an LMP2 car, a prototype with quite good downforce and aerodynamic grip, you want to try and roll the corner speed as much as you can. So you might want to try and go through traffic in a different way. Don't drive it in hard and then have to stop and get round. You want to try and almost just lift off a little bit early and swoop round. Sasha Masson was a master of that back in his day.
I think that was basically exactly what we didn't see in that clip, where the Olympus car went around trying to dive it too deep into the corner. Marcus Nielsen not going to be allowed to get alongside Emanuele Olivier, who he closed up through the traffic and already has now gapped 2 seconds to those behind. And so now LMP2 cars in the clean air once again. Well, guess what? GTPs have sung clean air right now with about 15 minutes in this race complete. We did mention that we are going to see a pit stop at some point through this race. Peter, given that we're only about maybe 5 more laps away from GTPs and GTDs overlapping once again, would you not be surprised to maybe see a GTP come in before they head off through traffic once more?
No question. If you can pit before you hit that next train of traffic, that's definitely an advantage in that, because it's pretty much impossible to maintain your lap time through big clumps of traffic. You're always going to be compromised. Oh, one of the GTP cars skiffing the wall on the entry to the chicane there. Dear me. Be careful with that.
That's what I was mentioning about an esports line. I'm not necessarily sure your chief engineer would be too happy about you running that line if they reviewed the onboard footage and saw how close you were getting.
Neither would the body shop either, with all the scrapes down.
Well,
down
maybe the spare
side.
parts department would. of whatever
Customer
manufacturer.
car,
Exactly.
possibly. Yeah, possibly.
Speaking
well,
of, by the way, customer cars, news today, not in IMSA necessarily, but over in the World Endurance Championship. Boy, we're getting a customer private Ferrari.
Well, of course, in the prototype ranks, yes, with AF Corsa. Not the driver lineup's an interesting one.
It's not bad. It's not your typical privateer lineup, I'd say.
No, it's an interesting one.
Give me your thoughts, Peter. Come on.
Well, I think Robert Kubica's a good shout. He's proven himself in any kind of vehicle with 4 wheels and an engine. He can drive it. I think he fully deserves that opportunity. It's kind of the Ferrari drive that's about 15 years out too late, isn't it?
True. That is what a up and down story to get to this point, I guess. I'm quite excited to see how Yifei gets on because, he's been pretty quick in a couple of different Porsches. I think he'll do decently in the Ferraris as well. And, of course, joined by Rob Schwartzman, so I think that will be a fun trio to watch over the course of the season. Speaking of IMSA, though, in particular, as the GTD leaders 1, 2, 3, 4 still run without too much interruption right now, quite excited about the introduction of the Lamborghini to the fold, and I'm sure you're going to be going and listening to it quite intently, Peter, at Daytona.
Yeah, it's very good to see Lamborghini coming up there with the Ligier chassis. So all of the chassis manufacturers that can be used for GTP have all been taken up. So Multimatic supply the Porsche, Dallara supply BMW and Cadillac. We've got Orica supply the Acura. So there's definitely a good mix in there as well, and they've developed a new V8 engine which has actually been sponsored or funded by Prema, the people who are behind Iron Lynx. Yeah, so they're kind of Iron Lynx and Iron Dames. They're all it's all one and the same with Prema now. So they're very involved in that project. So don't be surprised to see a pink Lamborghini of some description coming out on track in the next little while.
Well, of course, and Prema indicating that they may be interested in maybe joining up for an IndyCar entry as well and exploring those possibilities. So it's an interesting time for motorsport across the board, I feel, and looking forward to seeing how it's going to go. Of course, you talk about IndyCar, that's a relatively spec series, so you don't necessarily have the concerns about BOP that you do in some of these manufacturer-led and manufacturer-driven opportunities, but that's a GTP, GTD interaction that has seen Antonio Tabarelli's chance to try and close on the back of the 18. Somewhat squandered as now from trying to get on pass. Suddenly he's trying to close back up.
Yeah, really, really tight there coming through traffic. You just see the speed difference as well, and straight away Tabarelli trying to look up the inside, but nothing going just yet. And using all of the runoff, which you can do here at Watkins Glen. Stefano Narcisi, 5th place at the moment, running a little bit of defensive line there, just holding his rival at bay. Hear that 4.2 litre flat 6 just singing away at the back of this car, and see Acura, there's a perfect example, the Acura GTP there, going right around the outside but carrying the corner speed. Very nice.
And it's an illustration as well as the adjustments that sometimes when you're introduced to multi-class racing, often in iRacing, the instruction is hold your line, let the faster class go around, which does hold true for the most part, but once you get to this level, there's a little bit more of a dance that's going on. The two-step shuffle sometimes into various corners sees GTDs block the line on entry to indicate to the GTPs that don't come through, you'll get it on exit instead. No such GTP traffic, this time by Taro Borelli's not going to be able to get alongside, and so you see more smoke kicked up on that run through the bus stop. We've had a couple of laps without too much drama there, but I will say every time we reach back to this section on track, I get a little bit worried that something's going to happen.
Big props to Daniel Morpé as well in the BMW M4. Nearly the entire field is running the Porsche 992 GT3R, so it seems to be when you see that many top drivers using it, you know that that's the car to use at the current balance of performance setting. So Daniel Morpé in the BMW are doing a brilliant job right now. this BMW, which actually made its first real competitive steps, not on the outdoor track, but in the virtual track here in iRacing. We had it here in iRacing about 6 months before it was actually homologated for competition.
And then we got the M Hybrid V8 about 3-4 months, or 2 months, I guess, technically, before it was homologated. But yeah, I've always enjoyed the partnership that BMW and Dallara as well, of course, for that M Hybrid V8, have enjoyed and collaborating with iRacing, and had plenty of fun interactions with them with this content, of course. Let's not forget that some of those teams that straddle sim racing worlds, the real racing world, sometimes overlap and collaborate. BS Turner, it's great sometimes to see, Peter, the way that they're engaging on social media.
Yeah, I love it. Absolutely love it. That's what it's all about, because make no mistake, this is motorsport just like motorsport in the outdoor world is. The only difference is one is on a screen, one is out on the racetrack. The movements are the same. You steer the wheel, you push the pedals with your feet, and the simulation technology here on iRacing is amazing. So make no mistake, if you're new to this, this is motorsport just the same. Therefore, competitive teams do like to spread across both, and you look at several real-world drivers. You see them on the service a lot. If you're a regular user of the service, it's very normal to come across a real-world driver. In fact, just this week I've raced against Corey Lewis, who'll be racing at Daytona. Job van Uitert, probably. I don't think he's on the entry list this year. He was last year with TDS. Ross Gunn you see regularly, and many, many others. Probably the most high profile, of course, is Mr. Verstappen, but unsurprisingly, I've not been in a split with him.
No, I did.
Thanks to the iRacing's wonderful matchmaking system.
Well, we just kept the riffraff where it needs to be. Oh, sorry, that was from Mr. Verstappen's perspective. Don't worry, I've never been in a race with Max either, but Peter, I did manage to include in my show reel when he absolutely took Sven out last year. I just had to find a way to work it in, and so I did. The great thing is, like you say, it's all those different people that come here and do this. You mentioned GT4s before we went on air. I think we were talking about balance of performance and stuff. Daniel Morad's a great example, right? Who's not only been such a firm part of sim racing, competes, of course, in the IMSA Michelin Pilot Challenge in the Mercedes GT4 machine, but actually got 16 sim racers to step into that car at the end of last year, experience what that all is, and kind of share that enjoyment. And that's what sim racing is all about, especially the iRacing special events, the Roar this weekend, the Daytona 24 the weekend after that. Enjoying motorsport with friends and family.
Well, I think that we in the iRacing world, we nailed both the elite level and the participation level as our leaders into pit lane after pretty much right on half race distance. They couldn't have timed that any better for half race distance. Simon Collart's leading the way. But yeah, I think in the iRacing world, we get both. We get the elite and the participation. So we get the special events where we broadcast here on RaceSpotTV with the very best in the world, and you can run the same track in the same car, same conditions, and just marvel at their lap time and go, how did they do that? But then also, you can get a group of buddies together, get together and do these 24-hour races, 12-hour races, 6-hour, whatever it is, or sprint, whatever your thing is, you can do it. And if you're a beginner, you will be paired up with beginners, and if you're elite, you'll be paired up against elite. That's what makes this so special and so enjoyable.
Like I said, I have won a Watkins Glen 6 hours. I think I was the third split back then. I was very proud of myself. Yeah, it was back when I was actually a hardcore sim racer and didn't touch grass. Now I don't touch grass because I spend too much time in the commentary booth. That's the problem.
That's a different word for grass dipping.
Yeah, I was also just wondering that we had talked about it earlier. GTPs probably might come in before they get to the GTDs, and that was a risk being taken by the 35 Acura in going the long way around. Maybe that's why we saw what was a 25-second pit stop out of the former race leader Simon Cowlitz, along with Alexander Kessler, as they cycle back into some clean air.
Yeah, clean air is what it's all about here in this race, where traffic is definitely playing a factor, because the GTDs, they're so tightly matched that they're in one big bunch, so getting through them is so difficult. If you come across one car at a time, once every you know, 5-10 seconds or so, then it's not so bad. But when they're in big clumps, that's what's really a problem. LMP2's putting tyres on their pit stops. Of course, here on the now the rules are on the iRacing platform, whereas when you put fuel into the car, you can put tyres on at the same time. Now, interestingly, two of our Acura GTPs there are taking tyres, but the car in the middle there is not.
So that, I believe, is Ruggiero that's going to not take tyres. Of course, Simon Cowlott will re-inherit the race lead. We won't necessarily net race lead. We're waiting for one more driver to come down pit lane. It's the race off pit lane that we were quite curious about, and so as Dominic Illinger stays up on the jacks for 26 full seconds, it's Dominic Guttmeyer and Giuseppe Ruggiero that are neck and neck off pit lane, but with Ruggiero getting out just in front. Fifth now on tracks, two drivers in front of them still yet to come down pit lane.
Interesting, Ruggiero there. So he's decided to keep the existing tyres on, keep them relatively up to temperature and pressure and get onto it straight away, whereas those on the new tyres are going to be stone cold and not up to their pressure. Whoa, it's not helping Ruggiero though. Wow, we nearly pikes it into the wall there coming out of the chicane. He might well get a slowdown penalty there. And is he?
That was a little bit close for comfort. Now going to feel the pressure from what I believe is a lapped car behind, because the next car in queue, Dominic Illinger, is, well, 2.5 seconds back on the timing screen. So we saw some LMP2 pit stops. The front of the field, Leo Russell included, yet to make their way down onto the lane. But here we see Matthias Pirinen that's going to dive off of pit exit and well clear of those behind. Daniel Morphy in that BMW has also made a pit stop. But we are seeing a couple of split calls through the field that always intrigue me, Peter, because the later you come into the pit stop in a race like this, especially in the GTD class, more confident you can be about how much fuel you need to actually put in the car.
Yeah, it's easier to calculate. That's very true. Yeah, I was always a fan in this type of format to just run the tank out and then just go in and fill up what you need and go to the end of the race. But there's definitely more ways than that to skin the cat. Oh no, spin! Oh no! Oh, it's the Christine Bernard car has got turned into touring specification. Oh dear, I mean that will enhance its value, mind you, but oh, that will ruin its race.
Some people pay a lot of money for their Porsche GT3s to be delivered in that configuration. Let's go ahead and take a look at the replay, and it's on exit through the outer loop, and is it with traffic as they work through what is effectively an oval quarter? He gets just driven through.
So there you go, if you want to convert your Porsche from GT3 to GT3 Touring, just get a pointy-nosed Acura rammed up the back of it, and that should do the trick. There you go, ready. Boink. Actually, that happened to one of my Scalextrics cars when it got delivered.
Did it really?
The wing just popped off.
What a disappointment. I mean, I still remember the excitement as a kid of setting up the Scalextrics and just zipping them around on a Christmas morning.
I introduced my wife to it the other day.
How did she take to it?
She thought it was very exciting and very interesting for about 10 minutes and got bored.
And now you've got a room for your Scalextrics that you can go off to.
I'm still going to. I need to put out applications for a new Scalextrics buddy.
Oh, I mean, I wish I could be that buddy. It's just an awful long way to fly, unfortunately. LMP2 strategy. I mentioned in the grid that we've seen some intriguing calls. Gurlane Massing's gone for a 14-second pit stop. That is 3 seconds shorter than anyone else so far, as we now just wait for Leo Russell, for Michael Capisi and Morten Agerson to come down onto the lane. Intriguingly, your race leader, the one that's seemingly going the longest, as Capisi stays out there with him, but 4 seconds off of the lead.
Yeah, the LMP2 cars, the leaders, are seeming to go longer into the stint here in those Gibson V8 engine machines. All the same engine in the LMP2, very much a spec class. We only have the Dallara here on the iRacing platform, but out in the outdoor world you'll typically see the Orica chassis, although we do have one Ligier signed up for Rolex 24 at Daytona, which we haven't seen for a while. Yeah.
Oh, nice. That's a surprise. GTD's, by the way, come into pit lane, and as Timo Schmidt's already made his pit stop in the Porsche, he is now the net rates leader, and we'll wait to see where he is going to fare coming in through the penultimate corner. Now, GTD still have a relatively long way to trundle, given where their pit boxes are, before they can release the limiter. So as the Porsche comes out of the final corner, it's the ATRS machine, the Mercedes of Philip Bereswell, that's now just waiting to be released. An angry right foot just waiting to be smashed to the floor and for engine power to be given. The Porsche's already through though, and even though it's a slight shortcut on exit, Timo Schmidt's got an advantage that will build as they rise up the top of the crest.
And that's where you want that Mercedes power to just growl away, that 6.2 litre lump in the front of that Mercedes, just pulling it up the hill. That's really where it makes its lap time usually, that Mercedes. I think it's a pretty good package all round, but its straight line performance is usually very, very good. Certainly dominated the speed traps and the fast sectors at Daytona last year. Did the big Mercedes. It's a fairly old package now. It's been on the market for a long time, but still a solid package.
It's a battle then, 3-car battle effectively at the front if traffic wants to cooperate, because Daniel Morpy's leapfrogged his way in front of the battle of the Porsches, so he now runs in front of Narcisi and Taro Borelli, and behind them you can see what is now a 4-car train behind Turner. Intriguingly, the GT3's touring spec, not something that race control has deemed as requiring Matthias Pirinen to return to pit lane just yet, but you can't imagine he's got much downforce on that thing, can you?
Oh, it must be pretty nasty to drive without that rear wing. It must be pretty loose at the rear. But yeah, maybe just trying to get it to the end safe. And this will give Matt Loveridge a real bit of motivation, because you see the car in front, you see them wounded, you're thinking, right, I can get them here. Yeah, well, nothing wrong with the straight line speed of that number 6 car. I suppose it's the low drag special now.
That's a good point. I mean, if you want to set land speed records, get a GT3 Touring instead of the GT3. He's going to continue to stay out there, but you can see obvious discomfort just having to maximize the usage of the track and just slowing the speed, the potential of that car. And so Matt Loveridge has a half look up the inside, but doesn't really go for it. Jumping back over to the bus stop, and boy, well, watching on in a little bit of angst right now, because Gumplemar's holding on to third, but with effectively a handful of cars just waiting to pounce if anything does go wrong. And like we were talking about earlier, it is just Acuras that are running at the front now.
Yeah, I have to say it's a different idea for a one-make series. All Acura ARX 06s, and this is what these great onboard shots. Listen to this 2.4 litre lump just sing.
Man, you can hear the gear changes in iRacing as well, like the click inside the cockpit. I didn't even realize you could hear that.
Wow. And it's the speed of the way this engine revs. You think that can't be a turbocharged engine. It just climbs and loses rev so quickly. It's a proper engine. That it's not actually what you would think is an endurance racing engine, but you know, last year 24-hour race, it did the job. It's an amazing machine. And
you said intended to be an IndyCar engine, and of course plenty of interesting news about Honda and IndyCar engines over the last couple of weeks. Let's go and take a look at a replay, by the way, about, well, more drama at the bus stop. Should we necessarily be surprised? But it's as GTPs get past the GTD, and well, that's two separate incidents that somehow found their way together.
There was just never in a million years a gap there. Just look how far back this car comes from. I mean, that finishes the job, yeah.
I don't think that is necessarily what the GTP intended. That's Ryan O'Connell. Let's jump on board and ride with him.
No, this is, here you go, going in late. The GT car has to make the corner at some point. And I think a bit of target fixation there from the GTP car we're riding with there.
Maybe just a bit.
It all happens in front of him. Yeah.
Again, it goes back to, I think, the line that we run is a little bit close to the wall, and so if anything goes wrong, you're suddenly just too committed at some point, and you're straddling a very fine line. I do believe that we saw an incident, by the way, in the live pictures as we were watching an incident on the replay. And, well, it's an unfortunate Porsche that we've already seen involved, and as they try and go either side of it, down through the entry into the boot, well, that could have been a whole lot worse.
Well, that was Ruggieri there, taking quite a bit of damage. Ruggiero, excuse me, there in the Alitalia car. Ruggiero, the thing is, he's just keeping, he's not even slowing down, and there's no gap there, and just bang, straight into the side. Yeah.
It's been one of those races, hasn't it?
It really has. Ruggiero there, yeah, just drove into an accident.
Well, you want to talk about driving into an accident. Let's take a look on board with who has become the latest retiree from this race and probably going to be a DNF as well.
Oh! Now that, there was nothing he could do.
That is why I'm glad sometimes that the racing is very much virtual, because the impact of that was sickening. Well, I don't know where really to look right now. LMP2 is pretty stable at the front, where there's about 5 seconds between 5 seconds plus between each of the major contenders. We're still continuing to track the battle for the podium in GTP, although Simon Cowlarks and Alexander Kessler still sitting 4 seconds separated from each other at the front of the GTP field. It's maybe the GTDs where you've got the most close fighting going on for the time being, because you've got Timo Schmidt, Philip Bereswell, and now Robert Wajoris just lurking behind in what is a Mercedes sandwich with some Porsche bread.
Yeah, just keeping out of trouble here. It's a great run from your third place in GTD, Robert Wajoris. He's the 32nd seed. So if he is able to finish in this position, he will get a massive chunk of iRating. So the way the iRating system works out, it's all one big calculation on what is the standard, or the strength of field as it's known, so how strong is the field and where you finish in it. So if you're quite low ranked on the seeds and you finish high, you get a big chunk of iRating to your tally, and vice versa. If you're high ranked and you have a terrible finish, you lose a chunk.
Side by side in towards the bus stop, and it's Gumpmar that continues to hold on, as now Ruggiero, even with that damage, and Rodriguez behind to manage to close back up. Apparently Alitalia colours give you a little bit of damage buff, as it were, because he's been able to just hold that car with relatively little impact to the speed. LMP2 traffic in front's going to mean that Illinger's got the inside as we go 3 wide into the corner, deep under the brake. Gumplar will run off the track, is allowed to do so, but maybe not that far, as Illinger gets back up through and now into third.
Brilliant move there, just taking advantage. And Dominic Illigner, this is the view back from this Acetec Sim Sports Acura back to the Team Penske machine of Gumplar.
Like we were saying, even Thiago Rodriguez is closing. Well, maybe there is a bit of damage showing there, because there was just not that much top-end speed from number 27 machine, and so as Rodriguez gets on through. Now you have to assume that Rodriguez, who's already gained 5 positions this race, is thinking, I can probably gain a couple more, but there's only 8 minutes really left. He's feeding some draft to the car behind as they pop up now down on the run in towards the inner loop. Again, that top end speed differential. Oh, what happened there? Aliens.
It's like a bit of, aliens have come across Watkins Glen. What did they put in those hot dogs?
Well, they managed to make my voice jump by about 3 octaves, so there's that.
Yeah, the Alitalia car of Ruggiero just now starting to lose a little bit of ground.
It's on the curb.
Yeah, weird.
I'm just saying, the line that they're taking, that's maybe the reason why so many GTPs are crashing, Peter, is because they're taking a line that they shouldn't be.
Maybe there's a big bump or something, but it's not it's not working. It's funny you mentioned the Alitalia livery's got a bit of a force field. What livery fills you with fear the most in a public lobby?
Well, on social media, there's been many a meme over the last couple of days where you see a Red Bull livery, you know you should be worried. I can appreciate those comments. What's a really scary livery? I don't know, to be honest. back when I was actually sim racing, there were some team liveries that I was like, stay away from them just because I'd had history with them. I don't know, Red Bull livery, I'll go with that.
Yeah, I think that's a fairly good bet. What else? Alpha Tauri. That's that same family, I suppose.
And should you be more worried in some ways? Think of some of the drivers that have been in those Alpha Tauris over the years. Although I guess the what do we call him? The Torpedo. He had his unfortunate days mostly in a Red Bull.
Yes, true. Yes. I'm racking my brains of what also can be, but maybe a Dunkin' Donuts. If you see that one, that's usually not good. Mystery Machine.
No, that's not a. That's a good one. now I'm trying to think of IndyCar liveries that you'd be a little bit scared to see. There's a lot of them. That's why I'm trying to think which one. Any Paul Tracy livery?
Oh, come on.
Well,
I did hear a very, very funny soundbite earlier on this week from Sebastian Bourdais saying, "My name's Sebastian Bourdais, and I live part-time in St. Petersburg and full-time in Paul Tracy's kit."
Oh, that's
which I thought was just gold.
Oh, that is amazing.
It was a joke. It was a joke.
Right.
He wasn't being serious.
Yes, no, of course. And to be clear, I was joking as well. I genuinely don't have an answer to that question. Oh, we go either side and a pass on the grass. Thiago Rodriguez is going to kick off the madness. Oh, we're not done.
It's an absolute scrapyard there at the S's.
And not for the first time today either. Let's go back in time and let's watch the onboard perspective, Peter, because it had all settled down for a little bit and it was brewing up for something fierce.
Yeah, it was always good. When you're running this close up the S's through GT traffic, you're asking for trouble, and oh, that's a big move. This is, let's just go across the grass, that'll work. Yeah, oh dear, no.
To be fair to him, he's not the one that actually makes contact with the GTD, but I mean, we'll watch from up above. There wasn't much great decision making on all parts here.
It's like at that point you lift off, you don't go across the grass expecting that to work.
And then Matt Loveridge. I mean, Matt Loveridge has had a rough day, hasn't he?
Yeah.
Well, Watkins Glen, ladies and gentlemen.
Don't try it at home, kids. Oh, let's stay flat out. Yeah, great idea. Yeah, awesome. Let's go full throttle into a massive accident. That's going to work.
I have a name for that, right?
Yeah.
Arca brakes, unfortunately. Somehow as well, Alexander Kessler's been mixed up in... What? This is maybe... I've commentated on many a bizarre race. I've done an IndyCar official race on iRacing where we watched replays for more than 60% of the time because it was that wacky, that crazy. This still, I think, potentially is one of the crazier races I've called.
Well, I'm glad you said it, because I was thinking this has been particularly crash-filled. We've fitted a lot into 42 minutes, 3 to go.
Nobody, not done, by the way.
Simon Collarts, he's 31 seconds in the lead. Every single bit of traffic, he's probably taking a very wide berth.
Oh, and that's why he's got 35 seconds, because that's where Alexander Kessler got stuck.
Oh, how warm is your PC at the moment trying to recreate all these?
It's the benefit of the virtual world as we get unlimited camera angles and unlimited opportunities to go back in time and move the cameras around. I still remember doing a broadcast with a real world commentator. He saw an angle down the Mulsanne that we had on the sim and he was like, can you stick on this camera angle, took a picture of it and then sent it to the TV director over at Le Mans and said, let's get a camera there for the next one. And that is why, honestly, we are spoiled as broadcasters. As commentators, Peter, I was talking to John Hindorf about this. The amount of data we get in the sim racing world, I mean, wouldn't you love that at Daytona in a couple of weeks' time?
Yeah, and yeah, the opportunity to go back to, sitting in the booth, to go back to any car on any lap at any moment and rewind and pause all in real time, like in the booth. I know you can do that in... to a certain degree in the truck, but yeah, it's really, 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 really clever. So, well, how many cars have we got left? That's the question. Are they all on screen right now?
They could be. We've got 42 cars who started, and I see 33 left running.
There's a lot of troopers out there who have kept going.
Yeah, there are a couple of cars that are laps down. There's that Porsche that got tangled up down at the entry to the boot a couple of laps ago. They're 14 laps down from the leader, 10 laps down from the class leader, but still out there and circulating. It's been one of those races where there's been a lot, but maybe not all towards the front of the field. And our race winners today are not necessarily the ones we've talked the most about.
No, and I think that's how you win a race like this. You stay out of the trouble. Well, you said it at the top of the show, Arjuna. That's how you win a Watkins Glen 6 hour, is stay out the trouble, keep it clean.
Yes, I say that. Do you want to know what happened as the white flag is out, by the way? We're on the final lap of this race. I did the first 4 and a bit hours of the race, handed over to my teammate Elliot Roberts. As soon as he comes out of pit lane, Watkins Glen pit exit is not the easiest, right?
No.
Gets tangled up in an incident.
Oh dear.
Yeah, no, we still won the race, but it just goes to show. This is one of those
4.5 hours of grind. That's the sore one.
I mean,
it's a sore one.
Case in point, Philip Bereswell's just had a
GTD.
spin on the penultimate lap of the race. He still has the white flag to go. He's dropped behind Daniel Morphy. He'll get one chance to find his way back on past.
Oh no. Oh dear, that big Mercedes doing so well. And what that means that Robert Wajoris is now up into second. The 32nd seed is up in second. He's going to be in for a massive chunk of iRating.
I'm looking forward to seeing these results come the end, to see those swings and roundabouts of the iRating pendulum. But as it's Movano Sim Racing that come towards the line, Simon Carolot's victorious in the IMSA iRacing Online Sports Car Championship here at Watkins Glen International. It's going to be a while. 30 seconds before his next rival comes towards the line. Such was the dominance, such will be the margin of victory as well. Leo Russell from pole position also to victory, but with a slightly quieter day in that Init Motorsports number 2, sets himself up very nicely. The eyes of the world going to be focused on Daytona in a couple of days' time. Well, at Watkins Glen, he's built himself up quite nicely. 8 seconds will be his margin of victory. Peter, he also managed to stay out of trouble.
Yeah, brilliant drive from Leo Russell. Win by 7.8 seconds. A fairly convincing margin as well. Not quite the dizzying heights of Collart's 31-second behemoth margin, but still very, very good indeed. Brilliant stuff from Russell.
Wait for the rest of the drivers to come towards the line. There will be your GTD race winner, Timo Schmidt. 4.5 seconds will be the gap back to Robert Wajoris, who, like you said, came into this race 32nd seed with 3,800 iRating. The driver he's going to finish behind, about 6,500 iRating. Healthy chunk of change to be added towards the iRacing Daytona 24 iRating tally, as drivers all try and jostle for their position in relative splits. Timo Schmidt victorious though, started on the outside of the front row, stayed out of trouble and mastered the pit stop strategy to come out on top. Robert Wajoris second, and then Daniel Morphy will hold on to third, with Philip Bereswell unfortunately running out of time to be able to work his way back on forward. Let's not though miss what happened to him, Peter. Let's go back in time and take a look at the replay of how he went around.
So just coming up to the second last corner here, and gets help from a prototype. So frustrating. It's difficult. It's a difficult corner because it's kind of a double apex, and you almost have to leave half a gap to run your line normally. And prototype thinks, "Oh, yes, please."
I've got space, and yeah, it's unfortunate that the race
can fit in there.
comes to an end like that. Let's take a look at the results. The Movano Sim Racing car, Simon Cowlart's on top with Dominic Illinger behind. Again, 30 seconds, remarkable how he was able to break away. But the number one number associated with it, maybe somewhat expected. Dominic Guntmeyer third with Giuseppe Ruggiero fourth. Christoph Harsch fifth with Manuel Lange, Martin Brandenburg, and then Alexander Kessler, Thiago Rodriguez, and Jan Volmers through the top 10 as we begin to get into the used car lot before we even exit that top 10. Ryan O'Connor, Philip Boehm, Jan Lachowski, Dominic Nokel, Noah Rail, and Jacob Cohen make up the rest of the GTDP entrants, not finishers unfortunately. But as we cycle over to LMP2s, Leo Russell, Michael Capizzi, and then Gurlane massing through the top 3 and the podium finishes. That strategy worked a treat for Gurlane, just finishing in front of Marcus Nielsen. That battle, of course, unfolding in front of our eyes just before that pit stop cycle had unfolded. Emanuele Olivieri in 5th, Morten Agerson 6th with Nikolai Loft, Andres Lind, and Brian Molitor and Axel Pinet making up the rest of the top 10 as we get into that unfortunate DNF camp. GTDs, well, Timo Schmidt victorious after staying out of trouble. Robert Wajora 2nd, Daniel Morpay 3rd, and then Stefano Narcisi 4th, with Philip Bereswell dropping back seemingly with an incident penalty. That dropped him out of the top 5. Antonio Taraborelli 5th, Matthias Purinen 6th, Luis Marino, Philip Bereswell, and then Kiel Spalding and Kofi Hyman through the rest of the top 10. Down to 11 to find Tamas Fogas, Corey Turner, Matt Loveridge, Stefan Hills, and Stefan Jokasimovic. Rodrigo Liskovski, unfortunately, from the pole position spot, started this race off perfectly. Did not end the way that he was hoping. Well, immediately, Peter, our focus will shift to the Daytona International Speedway. We'll be back in 7 days' time for round 6 of this championship, but people should not forget tomorrow the iRacing special events begin with the iRacing Roar at 12:30 p.m. UTC, 2.4 hours of LMP3, GT4 and touring car racing.
That's going to be one to watch out for. We've seen some thrilling encounters in that Roar before the 24. But also the big one next week, Daytona 24 Hour. It's the biggest race we have here on iRacing, in sports cars at least, and I can't wait for it.
And of course, our race a week from today will be that final preparation for us, for some of the drivers, to get race practice under their belts. 45-minute sprints, 24-hour races. You may not think they have a lot in common, but Peter, let's not forget these iRacing special events, almost by virtue of the fact that there are no safety cars, well, they are 24-hour sprints from the drop of the green to the drop of the checkered.
That's right. They're completely different from what you see in the real-life Daytona 24 Hour, where you'll get often the field will be reset with a safety car. As you say, a total sprint to the flag. And these top teams, they just don't make mistakes at the front. It's so exciting to see who's going to come out on top. Can't wait.
And, well, that will also see us finish the first half of the season. Nordschleife, Sebring, Mugello, Aragon, a trip to Montreal, and then Silverstone to close out the first season of 2024. It's a worldwide trip. It's, well, a trip through some of motorsport's finest tracks, and, well, tracks as well that maybe, in the case of the Nordschleife, are best enjoyed in the virtual world. It is a treat through the season for these drivers, though, and Peter, the exciting thing is we've talked about the iRacing Daytona 24. At the end of this season, we look forward to Season 2 and the build-up to the next of the VCO Grand Slams, the Sebring 12 Hours, which, personally, is actually one of my favourite special events.
Oh, it's so cool, Sebring, you know, starting in the real intense heat of the day and going into darkness, and always goes down to the wire. It's one, if you've not done it yet on the iRacing special events, get a team together and give it a go. It's a challenge. Just getting to the finish, just like it is in the real world, is hard, but it's well worth a go and satisfying if you can do it.
Well, today was a challenge for plenty to get towards the finish, but those that persevered, well, were rewarded, I guess, in some ways. 45 minutes in the blink of an eye flew past in the IMSA iRacing Online Sports Car Championship. We'll be back in 6 days' time to preview the biggest sim race of the year. Thank you so much for joining us. For Peter Mackay, alongside myself, Arjuna Kankipati, we thank you for your company. We'll see you in 7 days' time. From Watkins, Glen, signing off. It's goodbye for now.